Hello again, and welcome back to the Daily Bread Bible Study. We are looking at day 66 for Friday, March 6, 2020, focusing on Joshua chapters 8 through 10. Today we will be talking about Joshua's successes, some tricks that he gets pulled over his eyes, but then also the blessings and challenges of Hebrew words as an English speaker. So, a little bit, I'd like to start off with a little bit about pronunciation in Hebrew. So I'm a native English speaker. I grew up in Texas, which has its own set of different words that and accents as well too. I went to school and minored in Greek, so I'm more proficient in Greek than I am in Hebrew, and yet I'm going to try and pronounce Hebrew words today, which means that I'm going to mispronounce a lot of the names today and also a lot of the names in the Bible. So, why do I bring this up? Well, today I have a very short name to kind of mispronounce. It's two letters, A and I. In the King James Version, it just calls it the city of Ai, but I don't feel like that's very faithful to what the original text would look at. So others call it, things like A as in play or I as in tie. But in Hebrew, we see the words are ayin and yod, two simple letters, and they have a patak under the ayin, which, in English, we would say it's an A and an I syllable, so just go for it. Just pronounce it like that. But the problem is that the vowel, or the words in the letters in Hebrew, they don't have any vowel sounds associated with them. They only have markings to denote the vowel sounds underneath, which is why the patak sounds like our English, is what we have to go after. So the patak sounds like our English ah, as in the word lava. And so it's that ah sound. So when we add this ayin and this yod together and this ah in between, it becomes a diphthong, because there's no good way to cut off the yod, cut it off without having a vowel sound attached underneath it. So thus, it may be wrong, but I'm going to call it say it as in I, mainly following the word like we have in English, Thailand. So you've got the AI there in Thailand, and the I is how I'm going to pronounce it. Hebrew words can be very tricky, and we will discuss that in chapter 10, one of the blessings of tricky Hebrew words. So we see that Ai is captured and destroyed, that Joshua comes up with a creative way to capture it. He splits his army of 30,000 in order to conquer Ai, the city. And so he sends 5,000 over on the east side as he comes there from the, he sends it over to the west side as he comes and approaches it from the east. And so they have a part over here, and right in the middle is the city there of Ai. And so he's going to capture Ai, and he sends most of his forces, stay the main force, camp right next to it it would be on the east side of it, and they would be there to the east of the city. And so the people in the city, have their army. They come out and seek to fight with the Israelites there. The Israelites pretend that they are getting destroyed, and so everybody, all of the men, all of the warriors come out to fight off these Israelites who are running away and fleeing from the city. That leaves the city vulnerable for the 5,000 who are on the west side to just walk on in and take it over, which they do, and they burn it. And so then they meet up as the people are in panic, realizing their city has been captured and inflamed, and they come and defeat the inhabitants, the warriors who came to fight in Ai. So everything, is destroyed. It's a complete slaughter. They leave the dead king there in a pile of rocks at the ruined city gate, because as God instructed them that they are going to destroy all of the inhabitants of the land. That is their call to do. Joshua then renews the covenant, fulfilling the instructions Moses gave in Deuteronomy 27. And they go up to Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal and offer burnt offerings unto the Lord. As it says in Joshua 8:32, and there in the presence of the Israelites, Joshua wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses, which he had written. Things are going well. And so Joshua 9, we see that the destruction of Ai is not only noticed by the people right around it, but it's noticed by a lot of people. The soon-to-be dispossessed inhabitants come together against war, for war against the Israelites, but the Gibeonites have a clever plan, seeking to save themselves through trickery. Now, the Gibeonites are some of the Hivites, or Hivites, depending upon how you pronounce things. And these cunning Hivites, they put on worn-out clothes and pretend that they come from a faraway distance with moldy bread and all sorts of things. And they lie and deceive the Israelites, saying in verse 6 of chapter 9, they went to Joshua in the camp of Gilgal and said to him and to the Israelites, we have come from a faraway country, so now make a treaty with us. The Israelites are uncertain in verse 7, but the Israelites said to the Hivites, perhaps you live among us. How can we make a treaty with you? Then they take out their provisions and show some moldy bread. They show burst wineskins. They show shoes with worn out shoes, like they had traveled a great distance with them. And so the Israelites then accept the terms, as it says in 9:14. So the leaders partook of their provisions and did not ask direction from the Lord. Big mistake. They make a treaty invoking God's name without consulting God about the treaty first. So 3 days later, they discover the truth. They travel for only 3 days to get to their cities, and instead of breaking their promise with the people, they force them into servitude for the Israelites through cutting wood and drawing water. Joshua in 9:22 summons them and says, why did you deceive us, saying, we are far from you, when in fact you are living amongst us? And the Hivites respond that they feared the Israelites and the Lord especially, and so Joshua acts in this way. And picking it up in chapter 9, verse 26. This is what we did for them. We saved them from the Israelites, and they did not kill them. But on that day Joshua made them hewers of wood and drawers of water for the congregation and for the altar of the Lord, to continue to this day in the place that he should choose. They are very cunning and crafty, but we also see some cunning and crafty words used here to describe the battle on Joshua 10. So yet again, names can be difficult, but this time it's not about pronunciation, but figuring out the Hebrew names and what puns they're trying to mean. Now, Hebrew has a lot of names, puns. For example, Moses means drawn out of water. That's what the name Moses means. And so Moses was drawn out of the basket by the daughter of Pharaoh. They're out of the water and did a whole bunch of different things with water to draw God's people out of water and slavery in Egypt. But focusing on this chapter, we read names like Adonai Zedek, Hoham, Piram, and Yaphrim, and then Deber. And so we see these kings are named out in the first part, but not really named out in the last part. So let's look at the first one, the king of Jerusalem, Adonai Zadok, which means it's two words. It's the word my Lord and righteous put together. It's similar to the name that we've seen in the Bible, Melchizedek. In this king, which means it's the words king and righteous put together. So both of these characters come from Jerusalem, which is the city known as the city of righteousness, or Salem, the city of peace. And so maybe this individual we could call as, he's king, Lord, and righteous, which, I think in a lot of ways it's pretty repetitious. If he's given himself the title of king, and he's also the Lord, and he's also righteous, maybe this means that he is the self-righteous king of Jerusalem. So we'll call him self-righteous. For Hoham, king of Hebron, his name means the one whom Adonai impels. So he is maybe pushed out, might be his name. Piram, king of Jarmuth, his name means like in wild ass. So maybe he's just wild ass. Japhia, king of Lachish, his name means shining or show thyself, which could mean that he's kind of showy. And Deber, king of Eglon. Deber is the Hebrew word for word or speech. And Eglon means kind of bull-like or bullish. So it means that he could be speaking bull. So put it all together, and you got these 5 kings, which their names could combine for this phrase. The Lord pushes out the self-righteous, the showy, the wild ass who speaks bull. So, as we will see, these kings are not very favored. These are the ones who are, they're, illustrated to be the abomination before God, and that kind of phrase of throwing all their names and their puns together, could say why God doesn't like them. So we see that the sun stands still. In Joshua 10:11, we see the battle goes the Israelites' way. And as they fled before Israel, while they are going down the slope of Beth Horon, the Lord threw down huge stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. And there were more who died because of the hailstones than the Israelites killed with the sword. So God doesn't like them. God is, in their vision and the writer's vision, that God is judging them by bringing these hailstones, these big hailstones, and killing them with hail. We see then after this, Joshua invites another wonder, that God performs a wonder through Joshua of stopping time. It says in verse 12, on the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the Israelites, Joshua spoke to the Lord, and he said in the sight of Israel, sun stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. So there is a lot of interesting and perplexing things going on here, but yeah, chapter 10 is definitely a story of God's power, of God overcoming these abominable kings, and then we have, following it up at chapter 10, the kings are then trapped in a cave as the Israelites chase down their enemies and return to their fortified towns. The kings are trapped as they go into this cave, and they just roll a large stone against the mouth of the cave and set men to guard it so they can't push it. So that way we have the kings, self-righteous, pushed out, showy, wild ass, and speaking bull. They get brought out, and the Israelites kill them, even hanging their bodies upon a tree until sundown, as the curse that was mentioned in Deuteronomy, in accordance with that law to take them down by sundown. and then they toss them back into the cave there dead. Now, all of this huge God, cursing these, even the dead bodies of these, showy kings, these self-righteous kings, these abominable kings. This is just very opposite from the experience of Jesus' death. Jesus' death is kind of similar. He's death on a king. Jerusalem's involved, but yet at the same time, Jesus' death is one where he is not self-righteous, but made righteous by God. And in fact, he doesn't have these, characteristics of these kings, at all. The Bible doesn't speak of Jesus having these characteristics, but sees him as a holy, righteous one, humble before God, and not showy. Another interesting connection here is that Jesus' name is named Yeshua, which is also the way that we get the name Joshua. And so even though Joshua here is a character in the story, we also know that Yeshua is going to be connected with the story through the ways in which that he doesn't model that, and also is hung on a tree too. So interesting connections there through the Bible as well. Well, to sum up the rest of the chapter 10, it's just Joshua wiping out the lower portions of the promised land, the hill country and the Negeb, the lowland and the slopes, and all their kings, as it says in verse 40. There are lots of connections, lots of interesting interconnections between the text, one that is both foreign to us, which is hard to pronounce, and yet at the same time, when we put it all together, it can be pretty easy to see. We're called to be faithful to God and called to live with God in mind and God's ways. So may you be filled with hope, and may this be an interesting journey this day for our Daily Bread Bible study.